Meanwhile, getting some breaking news on Ford this morning. Let's get to Phil LeBeau. Hey, Phil.
Carl, Ford announcing its next EV platform. This is a platform the company has been working on for a number of years at its Skunk Works operation out in California.
The car market is broken, and it's the middle class that's paying the price. Car prices are skyrocketing, but it's not just inflation causing this. Jim Farley, CEO of Ford, reveals how automakers' decisions are squeezing the middle class out of car ownership. Higher-end models, electric vehicles, and longer loans. These aren't solutions, they're traps. This isn't just about the price of a car, it's about your future. How long before the average family can no longer afford a car? Why isn't anyone talking about the real reason behind these skyrocketing prices? And what happens when your car payment becomes your biggest financial burden? Shocking car price surge. The average cost of a new car has skyrocketed in recent years, and this alarming trend is having a profound impact on middle-class families. What was once considered an attainable goal for many Americans, a reliable, affordable vehicle, has become an unattainable luxury for a growing number of people. Jim Farley, CEO of Ford Motor Company, addresses this crisis head-on, explaining how the automotive industry's rising prices are making it harder for the average consumer to own a car. Over the past decade, the price of an average vehicle has increased by thousands of dollars, outpacing inflation and wage growth. In fact, the average price of a new car in 2024 has topped $40,000, a staggering leap from the $1,000 in 2010. This price surge is not just a reflection of inflation. It's the result of a series of decisions made by automakers to increase the base price of vehicles. New technologies, such as advanced safety features and electric vehicle capabilities, have added significant costs to production. But even with these technological upgrades, Farley highlights that many of these price hikes are due to automakers' shift towards more expensive, higher-end models, which have become their primary focus. As the middle class struggles to keep up, these inflated prices are pushing reliable transportation out of reach for families who used to view car ownership as an essential part of the American dream. As these prices rise, consumers are increasingly turning to financing options to make car ownership possible. But this solution is far from straightforward. Financing crisis? The price hikes in the car market have led to a significant shift in how consumers purchase vehicles. More and more, car buyers are relying on loans and extended payment terms to afford new cars. What was once a simple purchase decision has turned into a long-term financial burden, as car loans now stretch out to 72 months, with some even reaching 84 months. Farley explains how this shift toward financing is creating a cycle of debt, where the average car buyer is effectively locked into a long-term financial commitment that outlasts the useful life of their vehicle. In the past, car loans typically spanned 36 to 48 months, allowing consumers to pay off their vehicles relatively quickly. However, with the rising cost of cars, consumers are increasingly forced to stretch their payments over longer periods to reduce monthly payment amounts. While this may seem like a feasible solution on the surface, it comes with significant risks. The longer the loan term, the more interest a consumer pays, making the total cost of ownership much higher than the original sticker price. Farley highlights the troubling reality that for many buyers, their monthly car payment is now one of their largest expenses, often rivaling rent or mortgage payments. This growing reliance on credit to fund car purchases means that many consumers are overextended and struggling to keep up with their payments. Real-life stories of families who are burdened by car debt are becoming all too common. Some buyers find themselves unable to pay off their loans, resulting in repossession, while others take on additional debt just to stay afloat. But the role of automakers in this crisis doesn't stop at pricing and financing. Their focus on higher-end models and electric vehicles is exacerbating the problem, making it even harder for the average consumer to keep up. Corporate role in rising prices. Automakers, including giants like Ford, are driving the inflation of car prices by shifting their focus to luxury and electric vehicles. Farley acknowledges that while the push for electric vehicles is necessary for the future of the auto industry, it also comes with a significant cost. Electric cars, while innovative and environmentally friendly, are much more expensive to produce than traditional gas-powered vehicles. As automakers scramble to meet rising consumer demand for these advanced vehicles, the price tag for even the most basic models is pushed higher and higher. The move toward electric vehicles is also forcing automakers to invest heavily in new technologies, including battery production, charging infrastructure, and software integration. These costs are passed on to the consumer, further inflating prices. While EVs represent the future of transportation, Farley points out that the middle class is often left out of this future, as the cost of ownership for electric cars is beyond their reach. What was once an affordable purchase is now an expensive luxury that many families simply cannot afford. Furthermore, Farley observes that automakers have made a strategic decision to focus on higher-end models to boost their profits. By prioritizing luxury features, premium finishes, and advanced technology, automakers are catering to a wealthier demographic. As a result, more affordable entry-level vehicles are being pushed to the sidelines. This shift is leaving the middle class with fewer options, as the cost of even basic vehicles continues to rise. As the industry shifts towards luxury and electric vehicles, it's no surprise that consumers are beginning to push back. This frustration is quickly turning into a growing revolt against the status quo. Consumer backlash. As the price of cars continues to rise and automakers focus on higher-end models, consumer frustration has reached a boiling point. Farley addresses the growing anger among middle-class consumers who feel increasingly abandoned by the automotive industry. The shift toward luxury vehicles and electric cars, while understandable from a business perspective, has alienated the very consumers who have been the backbone of the car market for decades. The anger is palpable. Families who once viewed car ownership as a symbol of success are now questioning whether they will ever be able to afford a new vehicle again. This sense of betrayal is evident in online forums, social media groups, and even grassroots protests, where consumers are voicing their frustration with the rising prices and the increasing difficulty of purchasing a reliable car. Farley notes that this frustration is not just about the price. It's about the sense that the auto industry has forgotten the needs of the middle class. As consumers demand change, the auto industry must respond, but whether that response will come soon enough to save the middle class from further financial strain remains to be seen. The crisis in the car market is not just a consumer issue. It's becoming a broader economic and political crisis that will have far-reaching consequences. If you're finding this eye-opening, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the rising car prices? Let's discuss. Your input could shape the conversation. Global shift in the auto market. The rise in car prices in the United States is not just a local issue. It is part of a larger shift in the global economy that highlights the tension between globalization and economic nationalism. As Farley explains, rising prices in the U.S. automotive market are a reflection of a broader trend where global manufacturers are increasingly looking to lower costs in order to remain competitive. In countries like China, for example, the government's focus on mass production and affordability has allowed automakers to push out cheaper, more accessible vehicles. A strategy that is in stark contrast to the increasingly expensive offerings in the U.S. Farley believes this price discrepancy is exacerbating the affordability crisis for middle-class families in the U.S. The economic nationalists in the U.S. have long called for policies that protect domestic industries and jobs, arguing that the nation's reliance on global trade and imports is a threat to American workers. Farley, however, argues that as car prices rise due to global supply chain disruptions and the shift toward more expensive electric vehicles, the U.S. car industry is losing ground, while foreign automakers are adapting their strategies to meet the needs of their consumers by offering more affordable models. The U.S. auto industry is increasingly catering to wealthier buyers with premium models and high-tech features. This global shift is creating a greater divide between rich and poor in the U.S., where more affordable transportation options are becoming increasingly rare. While global pressures weigh on the industry, the effects are also being felt locally as labor movements begin to respond to the increasing demands placed on workers within the automotive sector. Labor's push for change. As the car market faces rising prices and economic pressures, the workforce behind these vehicles is beginning to push back. Farley notes that workers in the auto industry are increasingly feeling the strain of an industry that has shifted its priorities toward automation, luxury vehicles, and higher profit margins, while overlooking the needs of the people who build these cars. For many in the industry, wages have stagnated, job security has become uncertain, and working conditions have worsened as companies push for greater automation. This shift in priorities has has led to a growing number of union actions, strikes, and protests within the automotive sector. The union movement has been vocal in its criticism of the increasing cost of living and the lack of wage growth that accompanies rising car prices. Workers argue that the profitability of the auto industry should result in better pay and improved working conditions, especially as corporations rake in profits from luxury car sales and advanced technology. However, despite these profits, the gap between the wages of workers and the prices of the cars they manufacture continues to widen, leading to increasing dissatisfaction within the workforce. Farley shares that the transition to a more automated and luxury-oriented industry has meant that fewer jobs are available for average workers. As automation takes over more manufacturing processes, the demand for low-skilled labor has decreased, while the need for highly skilled workers who can operate and maintain advanced technology has grown. This shift has left many union workers feeling left behind, as they struggle to adapt to new technologies and find their place in an evolving industry. Real-life stories of workers whose jobs have been threatened or eliminated due to automation are becoming more common, adding to the overall sense of frustration. As labor movements push for reform within the industry, the economic effects of these pressures are beginning to ripple outward, affecting global trade and international relations. Global economic impact. The impact of rising car prices and labor unrest in the U.S. is not contained within the borders of the country. As Farley explains, the U.S. auto industry's struggles have significant global ramifications, particularly in terms of trade, supply chains, and international relations. The inflation of car prices is having a ripple effect on the global economy, disrupting established supply chains and complicating international trade agreements. The reliance on foreign parts and materials, particularly from countries like China, has made the U.S. car market vulnerable to supply chain disruptions, further driving up the cost of vehicles. In addition to supply chain challenges, Farley points to the growing tensions in international trade as a result of the U.S. automotive sector's inability to compete with cheaper alternatives abroad. As U.S. manufacturers struggle with rising costs and labor unrest, countries like China and South Korea are increasingly becoming the dominant players in the global auto market, producing more affordable vehicles that are flooding international markets. This is making it more difficult for U.S. automakers to maintain their foothold in the global market. Furthermore, Farley highlights how these global economic pressures are exacerbating the affordability crisis in the U.S. As automakers focus on higher-end models and EVs, the cost of production has increased, which is passed on to consumers. The global supply chain issues, paired with the labor challenges within the U.S. auto industry, are creating an environment in which car prices continue to rise, and consumers are left with fewer affordable options. Farley warns that these trends could lead to a significant decline in the U.S. auto industry's competitiveness on the world stage. With global economic pressures mounting, the real impact of the rising car prices is being felt by consumers who are struggling to keep up. The consumer struggle. As car prices continue to rise, consumers in the U.S. are increasingly turning to alternatives in an attempt to bypass the rising costs of car ownership. Farley discusses how, for many families, traditional car ownership is no longer a viable option. The affordability crisis is pushing consumers toward ride-sharing services, electric scooters, and other forms of alternative transportation. This shift in consumer behavior reflects the broader trend of people finding creative ways to meet their mobility needs without having to commit to the high costs of car ownership. The rise of alternative transportation options is not just a response to the affordability crisis, it is also a sign of changing attitudes toward personal mobility. Farley highlights that, as more people rely on services like Uber and Lyft, the traditional car market is being forced to adapt. The demand for public transportation, ride-sharing, and micro-mobility solutions is growing, particularly in urban areas where owning a car has always been a financial burden. Farley notes that this shift could fundamentally change the way people think about transportation and ownership. As Farley concludes, the future of the auto industry hinges on its ability to adapt to the needs of consumers. The rise in car prices and the shift toward alternative transportation present an opportunity for reform. But whether the industry will take advantage of this moment remains uncertain. Reformed market needed. As the affordability crisis in the automotive market continues to worsen, Farley offers a potential solution: a reformed market that prioritizes affordability without sacrificing innovation. He argues that automakers must find a balance between luxury, cutting-edge technology, and price if they are to survive in an increasingly competitive market. Farley acknowledges that innovation is necessary for the future of the industry, especially with the rise of electric vehicles and autonomous technologies. However, he believes that these innovations should not come at the expense of the average American family's ability to afford a car. Farley's vision involves shifting the industry's focus back to the needs of the middle class. For too long, the auto industry has been catering primarily to wealthier buyers, focusing on premium features and high-end models. Farley proposes that automakers should develop vehicles that incorporate the latest technologies and features while keeping the price point affordable for the average consumer. This consumer-centric approach could restore the balance that has been lost as prices rise and the gap between high-end vehicles and entry-level models widens. Farley believes automakers must prioritize affordability, shifting focus from luxury features to creating reliable, functional vehicles for working families. This mindset shift is crucial for the industry's survival and restoring trust with the middle class, ensuring innovation is accessible to all, not just the wealthy. Future of affordable cars. As the auto industry struggles to maintain affordability, Farley suggests that government intervention may be necessary to ensure that cars remain within reach for the middle class. Price controls, subsidies, and incentives for affordable vehicles could help alleviate some of the financial pressures that consumers face. Farley highlights that in many countries, governments have already taken steps to ensure that cars remain affordable to a broad range of consumers. In places like Germany and Japan, government-backed initiatives have been put in place to incentivize the production of affordable, fuel-efficient vehicles, making car ownership more accessible. Farley suggests implementing U.S. policies like subsidies for affordable electric vehicles to lower prices and encourage accessibility. He also advocates for tax incentives to promote budget-friendly options, helping manufacturers balance affordability with technological advancements like electric propulsion and autonomous driving. While government intervention could help address the immediate affordability crisis, the question remains, what does the long-term future of the auto industry hold? Farley shares his thoughts on whether the industry will return to focusing on affordable vehicles. Looking ahead, the rise of luxury vehicles and electric cars has changed the landscape. But Farley is hopeful that the industry can shift back to serving the broader consumer base. He predicts that as consumer demand for affordable cars grows, automakers will be forced to adapt and return to more affordable price points. Farley envisions a future where electric vehicles become more accessible to the middle class, with prices that are competitive with traditional gas-powered cars. Farley envisions a new generation of affordable cars that blend advanced technology with accessibility. As battery technology improves and production becomes more efficient, electric vehicles will become viable for middle-class families, balancing innovation with practicality and price. As the auto industry navigates these changes, Farley concludes by considering how the car market crisis is reshaping American economic identity and the future of mobility. Shifting economic identity. The car market crisis has had a profound effect on American economic identity, and Farley believes that this shift could lead to a fundamental transformation in how we think about transportation. In the past, owning a car has been a symbol of independence and success for many Americans. But as car prices rise and the affordability gap widens, that symbol of economic achievement is slipping away for the middle class. Farley reflects on how this crisis is changing the role of the car in American life, suggesting that the days of the car as a status symbol may be over. As mobility costs rise, Farley predicts that ride-sharing, public transit, and micro-mobility will gain importance. The traditional car ownership model may decline, particularly in urban areas, as people rethink their relationship with transportation and its financial burden. As cars become less attainable for the middle class, Farley leaves the audience with a thought-provoking question. What does this mean for the American dream? Can mobility remain a cornerstone of American life, or will it become something reserved only for the wealthy? If you've stayed with us this long, you're probably seeing this crisis in a whole new light. Don't miss out on future insights. Subscribe now and stay ahead of the curve with the latest updates on the auto industry. The call for industry accountability. The growing crisis in the auto industry, driven by rising prices and a shifting focus toward luxury, has reached a breaking point. Farley stresses that the industry must become more accountable to the very consumers it has failed to serve. He argues that automakers cannot continue to prioritize high-end models and electric vehicles at the expense of the middle class. Farley urges industry leaders to reevaluate their strategies and develop vehicles that cater to everyday consumers, offering both affordability and innovation. Farley urges automakers to prioritize the real-world needs of consumers, focusing on affordability and reliability, not just technological advancements. He calls for accountability to address the affordability crisis and offer cars that are accessible to the middle class, not just the wealthy. While the industry must take responsibility, there's another key player that could drive change: the government. So what's the role of government policy in shaping the future of the auto industry? The role of government intervention. The question of whether the government can play a role in addressing the affordability crisis in the auto industry is one that Farley grapples with. He suggests that the government could help drive change by implementing policies that ensure vehicles remain affordable for the average consumer. Farley discusses the importance of government-backed incentives for automakers to produce more affordable cars, particularly electric vehicles. He draws parallels to successful policies in countries like Norway, where government incentives have made electric vehicles more accessible to the public and where the EV market is thriving. Farley suggests that subsidies for affordable electric vehicles and tax credits for consumers could reduce production costs and make EVs more accessible, easing the financial burden on buyers and helping to offset high upfront costs. As the government looks to intervene, Farley predicts that the future of the auto industry could be shaped by a new model of affordability and sustainability. As the auto industry pivots toward a more sustainable future, the broader implications for society and the economy are far-reaching. Now, let's not forget how the changing landscape of car ownership is reshaping American economic identity. The shifting American economic identity. The crisis in the auto industry is part of a larger shift in American economic identity. Farley notes that as the cost of car ownership rises and the middle class struggles to keep up, the very idea of mobility in America is changing. Historically, owning a car has been seen as a key part of the American dream. It's a symbol of independence, success, and upward mobility. But as car prices soar and the dream of car ownership slips further out of reach for many Americans, Farley suggests that this symbol of success is no longer attainable for everyone. The shift away from traditional car ownership is reshaping how Americans view success. As mobility becomes more expensive, people turn to alternatives like ride-sharing and public transit, especially in urban areas, reflecting a fundamental change in societal values of independence and success. As Farley concludes, the question remains: if cars become less attainable for the middle class, what does that mean for the American dream? Is mobility still a cornerstone of success, or will it become a luxury reserved only for the wealthy? Thanks for watching and diving deep into the car market crisis with us. If you're feeling the weight of rising prices and uncertain futures, you're not alone. The auto industry is at a crossroads, and it's up to us to demand change. Now, if you found this video insightful, don't just walk away. Take action, like, comment, and share your thoughts below, because the conversation doesn't stop here. We want to hear from you. And if you're ready to stay informed and ahead of the curve on all things auto industry, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Stay engaged, stay curious, and stay prepared. We'll see you in the next one.